Welcome to the Consultants Way podcast, where we explore the world of professional services consulting. Hosted by Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, each episode delivers expert insights, real-world stories, and interviews with top consultants to help you refine your consulting skills.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Consultants Way podcast. You're here with Anthony Paluska and Dean McMann, and today we're joined by Dushyant Mitra. And Dushyant's here to share a wealth of experience from your background working in professional services, consulting, and other parts of the organization, support and partnerships. Dushyant, if you don't mind, please provide a little bit more background and introduction to yourself, and then we're excited to dive in with you today.
Something about when you were in school. No, I'm just kidding.
Right before we started recording, we were talking about answering home phones,
you can tell a story.
Oh my God, too many stories. I'd have to go back decades, but it's so good to be here. I have been working in the consulting professional services sort of space for around 15 years and thoroughly enjoy the space. My role my career has taken me through multiple phases, starting from implementations, managed services, supports, partnerships, like you said. And so I have really enjoyed having an experience that has a lot of variety because it's given me a view into every part of a customer-facing organization. So I've really enjoyed that. I work at a enterprise SaaS company right now. I currently manage our post-sales partner experience and overall support strategy for the organization.
Great.
That's great.
Great. And
I was going to ask him if he got moved around on purpose, or was it just, hey, you should take it?
I will neither confirm nor deny.
Do not answer that one.
There's no truth in the rumor.
Do not answer that one. So, as we talked a little bit before this, one of the topics that you're passionate about, we're passionate about as well, is this overall concept of, okay, we're in enterprise SaaS organizations. We have these big professional services organizations here, but as we think about them and how many of them operate and the metrics that they're held accountable to and all sorts of things, that's very different than how we would think about a pure play consulting organization and some of those differences. And I know you're passionate about this, as are we, of how do we manage our professional services teams more like a consulting business? And we sometimes use that term interchangeably, but that's probably not a fair way to do that. So I'll use that as an opener. Please, talk a little bit about that topic, why you are as passionate about it as we are, and then we can dive into some questions.
Yeah, the whole premise of the idea was I actually got a flavor of it moving from consulting into professional services. There were things that were very similar, and then there were things that were managed in a very different manner completely. It felt like just two completely different businesses. In some ways, they are different businesses, but they don't need to be, is what the idea is. Oftentimes, when you are in an enterprise SaaS company, you might look at your professional services from a product or vendor mindset, where oftentimes it's thrown away for free or heavily discounted, not focusing on things like utilization and profitability. But that's where I feel like it's under leveraged. It can get to that stage. The consulting mindset, on the other hand, is not only to take care of like financial responsibility, but also evolution of offerings and services. Mm-hmm. As your product evolves, as the industry evolves, as your company grows bigger, you might go into different verticals, you might go into different industries. Your professional services offerings can also evolve with that, like a good consulting firm would introduce offerings that are relevant and are being offered at the right time for the customer base that you're trying to serve. So that was the whole idea, that evolution can happen. If you're nimble, if you're mindful about it, while taking care of financial responsibility, it can actually have a huge impact on not only your own organization, but wider employee retention as well in PS.
Yeah, we've invested a lot of money in building, training for people in the PS business to be able to function at the client side, bring the client along like a consulting firm, right? And so we're very passionate about, as you said, there's no reason all those skills can't be applied and used. It's just they didn't think that way when they came out of the way the product company set it up.
Right. Yeah, and that's huge, because once your customer base is used to your implementation, your managed services, then they're going to be like, okay, what's next? How can I try and multiply the impact of this software? And that's when you can have the mindset of, can I try and introduce offerings like advisory on a specific industry or a solution that I'm selling, or change management, or even business process optimization, so that your customer's business is pre-prepared to be able to receive and implement your software. Because a lot of these SaaS companies, a lot of these SaaS implementations are really good when it comes to product and implementation, but the real change happens on your customer's side, right? Are they communicating the right way within their organization? Are they changing their business processes so that the impact of your software can actually be had on their business?
And we know they're not. Right?
Yeah,
I
not
mean,
in
come
all
on.
cases,
I mean,
yeah.
they're not good. If they could do that, they would, But the other thing is, well, we're leaving money on the table. But I believe the more we do for them, the better they'll feel, the less likely to leave, and leakage will be improved.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we in enterprise SaaS, we talk about stickiness, right? It all translates into how easy is your renewal conversation? What kind of concerns are coming up? Is the concern that I implemented the software, but I didn't completely utilize it? Or is the concern that I don't have enough time to implement the rest of your product suite? Right? So it's a very different conversation when you try and approach it that way. And it's a little bit of a mindset shift. It's obviously easier said than done. It takes effort. It takes bringing your stakeholders on board. It takes bringing your customer base on board, because they might be very used to you operating in a certain way, and then you're coming in. But as a professional services team in a SaaS world, you are an expert on your product, and you've probably seen hundreds of implementations across many industries around the world. So who better than you to give those advisory services to your customer base?
Right. They just have to be changed, if you will, enabled, thought differently,
Evolved,
act
maybe.
differently.
Yeah.
Trained, whatever the right word is.
Yeah, I mean, and look, the agility of the consulting organization or the professional services team is so much greater than the product organization as well. And so if there are things that are barriers to stickiness, to adoption, to implementation, the professional services team, to the point you were on earlier of, okay, how do we build a new service offering, and how do we leverage our expertise solving this problem for hundreds of organizations to make this better for everybody before we can even implement a product change, right? I mean, there's the insight into the market, there's the agility of it, there's all these things that I don't know if you've had the same experience, but hey, the professional services organization isn't always clear about. That's part of our charter and our mandate, which is we are the ear to the ground to our customers, but we're also the ones that are closest to them to make these things work.
Exactly. So it's not only implementing what you have today, but also being the feedback loop in terms of back to product and engineering, that here's what I'm hearing when I try and roll out the software to this global organization. And here are things that will drive huge impact in the product, right? Whether it's related to product functionality or things like self-service. Like a PS team is in a really good position, one of the best positions to be able to give that feedback back to the product organization as well.
Yeah, and it's not always the same feedback they get from sales, which is price or
Of course. Different perspectives. So
I really liked your example when you said different things you could offer. They were more and more consultative, process re-engineer, and it took both capability but also the knowledge, as you said, implementation after implementation. So do you find everyone is open to this journey, or do you find that it's really hard to get PS leaders and then their environments to buy into it?
I think there's a lot of openness to this journey. Where there might be roadblocks is this oftentimes just not enough time, or not enough resources, or not enough of an ability to just like step back, right? So it does take a lot of intention and purpose to be very sure about that this is time I need to carve out to be able to strategically think about this as an organization. The idea in principle sounds great, right? That yes, you should move over to a more consultative mindset. There are great consulting companies around the world that have, used this framework and this model to build very successful businesses. But the actual execution of it is where there can be sometimes pushback, where there can be sometimes hesitation in terms of this is a great idea. Do we have time for this right now? All right, do we have the resources for this right now? What would the training requirements be across the organization? But in principle, I think you'd be surprised. You'd find a lot of alignment in your PS leaders around an idea like this.
Yeah, so we've worked with a lot of organizations and leveraged professional services more in the advisory capacity to help differentiate their suite of offerings, and we see the same thing where in concept you get a lot of the buy-in, but the mechanics of actually making this work and changing the offer portfolio and then cascading all of that stuff down is where the rubber hits the road. Sometimes we do see, right, not at the management level, but at the team member level, the professional services, the consultants on the team, they're the ones that are actually the most resistant to it because it's outside of their comfort zone in so many ways. Instead of, right, they might be more technical by background, and this just, it feels very different.
And sometimes they're rewarded by being experts in technical, and they don't want to not be the expert.
Yeah.
Yes, and that is because the offerings haven't evolved. Right. So you generate a habit of like, oh, you could do this configuration in 10 hours and now you can do it in 2 hours. You must be great. And you are. It's the technical skills, there's huge importance to that. Not saying there's not, but I think you're under leveraging the hundreds of implementations that your PS team has done and has the insight to be able to think, okay, what more can I do with this? I do join this into the employee retention aspect as well, because on your services teams, on your implementations teams, there'll be people who are having these ideas, who are saying that, hey, a customer gave me this problem just over a lunch and I was able to give them ideas. They might already have that customer consulting mindset. It's important to like tap into those people. Those can be sort of your seed folks that will lay the foundation for creating a mindset like this. And it's not surprisingly, extremely beneficial and extremely rewarding to be able to learn something, learn how to do it well, be able to teach it, and then advise others on how to do it.
Yeah.
That whole journey as an employee, I've experienced it a few times I've been lucky to experience it a few times in my career. And I think that is truly rewarding. So if you can create those opportunities, you're not only making your customers happy, you're making your CFO happy because you're bringing in additional streams of profitable revenue, and you're having a good impact on your employee retention. I think it's a win-win. It takes effort, but I think it's a win-win.
No, you are totally right. A lot of our team is already thinking that way, and getting better at their jobs. It doesn't have to be constrained to getting more efficient at the tasks I'm already doing, but applying that knowledge to solve additional problems, advise others, so that there's this endless opportunity for growth and development, and that's motivating and encouraging for many. And for some of those folks on our team, we just have to set the expectation that we want you looking for those things, and we think that you do have all this additional value to add because of your experience. And what are the primary roadblocks that an organization runs into in this, and how would we solve that? How would we be proactive about advising a client how to get around those sorts of? I mean, there's so much of that just by framing it to the team, they'll embrace and they'll run with, and then we just need the mechanisms to standardize some offers so we can actually deliver on those profitably and repeatably and that sort of thing. But
and the fun thing is there's a huge amount of hunger in customers for conversations and approaches and ideas like that, right? Like as a PS team, you might create your own implementation methodology, as you should, follow it, refine it, evolve it. But what about the implementation methodology on the customer side, which you can call change management, you can call business process optimization, you can put it under the advisory umbrella. But how do I prepare my customer to be able to receive, roll out, and do value realization from this software suite that I'm installing? Those angles only come from people, or often only come from people that have seen it repeatedly, which is your PS team, right? Which is what you need to leverage, I think.
Yeah, we don't think it's ever the customer that doesn't want more help. It's the PS teams, but also we see a bifurcation from, and they're both fine, but make it simpler, make it more productized, get in and out, quit, and make it more sophisticated, drive more revenue, drive more, and that is an interesting journey we see in our PS clients.
Yes, I mean, I don't think I can think of too many instances where I would ever recommend a product team to not make something simpler, right? Like, you should always make something simpler, because when I think simple, I think fast, efficient, more stable, maybe self-serviceable as well, which is great. And it's not when you're making a product more self-serviceable, it's not a revenue loss per se. It's a multiplier, because the things that you were doing for X dollars an hour, your customer can do, and you can charge 2x dollars an hour for higher value, more impactful services. So that bifurcation will always be there. I think the risk that companies face is that we over-index on just simplification or just making it more complex. I hope not too many companies are intentionally making it too complex, but if you just focus on simplification, and then you have all of this time and availability and resources, your implementation projects used to be, say, 3 months, and now they're a month. What are you doing for the rest of the 2 months? You can grow your customer base, obviously, but are you trying to earn more revenue in a more profitable, consistent manner or not? Those are the things, those commercial angles oftentimes get missed, because we live so much in our own worlds. We live so much in our professional services world, and I'm product and I'm sales, and this is what I'm going to think about. So it's that cross-pollination, I think, that can be missing sometimes when you're doing that bifurcation.
Yeah, it was interesting to you talk about the functions there, and I'll leave their name out, but there's a big software company out of Houston, where we both live, that is not functional at all. There aren't functions. It runs like a big consulting firm, and it was started by a couple of Accenture people. So one of my relatives is an exec there, and you might be doing this, but you might be doing that, and you end up understanding all the pieces, but it's more like the way Toyota makes cars, teams, and they move around and stuff. And there's no functions, though. So what they broke apart, very difficult to do, but what they broke apart are these functional misunderstandings. Because you've done the sales, you've done the service, you've done the support, you've done the training, you've done the consulting, you've done marketing, because your team, and I think they're the only ones I've seen have done that.
Yeah, and it's hard to do, because we are, again, so used to being in our own worlds. But here's an example of a very practical, this sparked a thought, but here's an example of a very practical way of turning your PS team more like a consulting firm, is when your expert analyst, senior analyst gets promoted into a project manager, a program manager, portfolio manager, then they have a view into, say, 30 accounts. They should be the ones trying to identify the next sales opportunity. They should be the ones trying to identify the next, not only services sales, but maybe software expansion opportunity as well. Lay out spiffs so that they can be incentivized to highlight opportunities, and then, go to the market together with the salesperson, because identifying more leads is always helpful. But where it's coming from, that program manager who has a purview over 30 accounts is in such a good position. But we often tell them that, no, just do your services, right? So that commercial aspect gets missed, which is what I think good consulting firms do really well. Once you're at the senior manager level, you might have quotas, you might have targets, you might have sales motions going. And I think SaaS companies can do that too with their PS teams.
I completely agree. And we are doing some work with a consulting organization right now that has that same challenge. And so
inside a product company.
Yeah, inside a product company, right? The exact same thing. And the first thing it just significantly moved the needle was, we said, your senior consultants and your manager level for these projects, you need to put together your consulting opportunity plan, right? And
Right.
as an input into the overall account strategy and the overall account plan. And just by going through that exercise, they were immediately on the, wow, I guess I could do this and this other thing I hadn't thought about, but this is a really easy thing that we could add. And if I told this other group, the product group, that there's this opportunity there, we could collaborate on something. And their pipeline, they added 15 opportunities to the pipeline just working with 8 people on this topic in an afternoon, just by asking the team that's actually closest to the customer to sit down and think about what else is here, what expansion opportunities.
And now we have to make it habit, right? You got to get everything. To your adult learning thing you did earlier, you got to get good enough that you could train somebody else, right? So you got to make it habit. Yeah, we love that journey.
But it's the perfect point, right? All the opportunities and the knowledge about what can happen lives in this team's minds, and now we just have to activate it and train them on how to do something.
And the activation happens with that cross-pollination that I was talking about, right? Like if it's almost like, you can set off those dominoes where your program manager identifies that we have a renewal coming up in the next 2 quarters. Here's the biggest thing that they talk about when they talk about product. Oh, there's a product manager in the room as well who says, okay, that actually is lower hanging fruit than like completely changing XYZ in the product. So I can do that. And then sales says, oh, I have a reference from another customer that we did this. So the wheels start turning. And I feel like, yes, the execution is definitely important, but we need to put people in those positions. We need to empower our resources to be able to think like that, because the talent's out there, the capability is out there. The knowledge and insight is also out there. What's not out there is the mindset of that, yes, this can also be your job. That's what's missing sometimes.
Well, you make a really good point. So we were talking about talent this morning, that when they come from a product company into a consulting company, they're not used to being empowered.
Yeah.
Right? And they go, well, how do you want me to do that? And we're a very true consulting firm. So we say, well, I don't know. I think we should hire somebody smart. Oh, like you. And you should figure it out.
Exactly.
And that's so different for them, because they're used to don't do anything, come to your boss. But I think empowerment is the change.
It is the key. And this, obviously, we are talking about this in the context of running your services team like a consulting organization. But in general, for employees, they just want to feel empowered to be able to come up with ideas, execute on ideas, find some time in their day where they can run an initiative, roll it out, and then see the impact and value of it. I think
you've multiplied all your little experiments. You've multiplied all your sales up. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. So as we begin to, and thank you so much. What a great job. As we begin to wrap up today, is there like a thing you'd like us to remember? Like, hey, your PS team can be a consulting firm, or you can cherry pick what they do and add to it, or we should be doing more?
I think the sort of bottom line in all of this is that evolution is inevitable when it comes to companies and products, but also for professional services organizations. And evolving in a direction where your capabilities and even your existing talent can be complementary to where your company wants to go, where your product wants to go, what your customers are asking for, is something that we should definitely focus on. So I would really focus on making sure that you're evolving your services along with your organization, and evolving it in a consulting mindset is hugely beneficial, because we have so many good examples of that.
That's great. We would ask you for a funny story from your childhood, but we're not going to get to where you use the, what was it, phones?
Yeah, the phones.
The phones. No, but next time we're going to get all about your childhood phone. But great job. Thanks so much, and we'll have you back soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Great job.
Well, I thought that was a great conversation. I think his perspective is, right, having been in a traditional consulting organization, seeing how the PS organizations within SaaS operates, and seeing missed opportunities that a lot of them are dealing with just because of, hey, their original mandate and charter was be in here to help make the product work and to be additional giveaway services in some way to just enhance the value of, and in some cases when the product's in its early stages, Band-Aid and duct tape together the product to actually make it work for a client. evolving that to really, realize the true value of consulting. It's just a topic, obviously, we're really passionate about.
If we could do one thing for all our friends, it would be have them successful on that road.
Yeah.
Because that will make all the difference in the quality of life, the quality of work, the stickiness. It's a great journey. And I thought he was very articulate about it.
Oh, yeah. No, and I don't think it
and
matters.
And you pronounced his name well.
Thank you. I don't think it matters what the strategic role that the organization sees professional services to be. That does not impact whether or not the PS firm should operate more like a consulting firm. Like we talked about, our consultants could be the insight from the customer and seeing exactly what's in there. And so part of our product strategy, product roadmap, marketing strategy, positioning, all of that, they can be a revenue generator by continuing to expand into other things. They can help differentiate the organization. They could do all of these things independent if you want PS to be a bit of a loss leader, if you want professional service to drive adoption, if you want professional services to drive revenue and profitability for the organization. None of that matters. The shift from the technical PS to more consultative, I think is a value add for all organizations.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, super job. We'll have him back.
Yes, no, that would be great. I'd love to talk to him a little bit more about portfolio management, right? He talked about his offers and how he builds new offers that are more customer-centric than product-centric. And how to make those productized and repeatable as much as possible.
Yeah, how much repeatability is needed,
Yeah.
How did the people come across, but
yeah.
Anyway.
That was great. Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening. If you're enjoying this, please follow us, like us on YouTube and on the podcast networks. Also, if you have some insights or thoughts or suggested guests for us in the future, connect with either Dean or I on LinkedIn on that, or email us at podcast@consultantsway.com. And we'll be happy to include any additional guests in the future. Thank you.
Take care.